Hello everyone. So this video is going to be about the last month or 6 weeks or so and what's happened. And if I'm honest, I don't quite know where to start. It's been a bit intense and crazy. So it's involved a stay in hospital, a psychedelic trip or multiple psychedelic trips into my crazy subconscious that has transformed how I think. And it also has involved some really just like lovely healing conversations with my family, which have been lovely. So I'm going to make 3 videos. So this one is going to talk about my stay in hospital and the kind of moment of surrender I had when I got into hospital. The second one that I'm going to finish next week explains my psychedelic trips and goes more into them. And then finally, I'm going to do one with some just, I guess, reflections on the last 2 or 3 years and the soul searching I've been doing since I started therapy back in 2019. Journaling, other stuff, just reflections on what I've learned, sort of, diving into myself to try and figure some things out. It's quite a good video actually. I've done that one already. And just, I've mentioned psychedelics, and I just want you to suspend your judgment on psychedelics and everything you think about them until after you've watched my second video. I know it might sound quite random to talk about them, but I've really been researching them for 2 years, and the experiences I had on them or with them were significant, and as I say, they really transformed the way I think, feel and experience the world. And it's been probably about 3 weeks since, so yeah, things still feel very different after the experience. So with no ego, I'd say if you don't know much about psychedelics other than their reputation from the 60s or taking them in Amsterdam or something for jokes, yeah, you should watch that video. This one is just filler. It's just the setup for that video, really. No, this video is very good. You should watch it all, of course. So, let's get into my 6-day stay in hospital, which will make sense. It'll make sense as I go when I say this, but it really was the best thing that could have happened to me. So I went into hospital on the 21st of June, and for about 2 or 3 weeks before that, my symptoms had been sliding. I'd been on high doses of steroids, as well as the injections, specifically for Crohn's. And the idea is that you start on very high doses of steroids. They reduce the inflammation like immediately, and then reduce them. And as you reduce them, the injections then take over to manage the condition long term, because you shouldn't be on the steroids long term. But reduce the steroids, and then the injections. That it didn't happen at all. The plan, because once I was on the low doses of steroids and came off them, the injections unfortunately just they didn't do anything, and then I got really ill. So the pain and the blood came back on very strong. The blood from my bum. It got so bad that that one time, I don't know why I'm laughing. One time when I was walking my dog Milo, I had to run into the bushes and shit some blood, and then continue the walk. And again, I don't know why I'm smiling saying that. It wasn't very pleasant. And that's how it works. It's not always bad. Like, I don't always feel like, oh, I'm gonna die and feel awful, but it gets super intense at moments. And then the blood comes out, and then I wouldn't say I feel okay after that. It's still quite traumatic to shit blood, but generally the intensity goes after I do. But when I'm bad, I can have that between sort of 10 and 20 times per day. And so this was gradually building for a few weeks before I went into hospital. And then this is where things get a bit complicated. It turns out that this current issue I have, it may be, there is no certainty, but I may have been misdiagnosed with Crohn's for this particular issue. So coincidentally, a few days before I ended up in hospital, I had a flexible sigmoidoscopy, or a flexi-sig for those in the know. So that had been planned in advance. So it's a really fortunate coincidence. And then the flexi-sig is sort of like a colonoscopy, but it doesn't go as far up into your colon. It just goes up the bum, into your rectum, the first bit of the colon. From that end, from your bum end, is your sigmoid colon, and I don't know, I'm just looking at my t-shirt, and that's where my issues are, just up here on my left side. And when they did the flexi-sig, they saw that the inflammation, it didn't look like Crohn's. It looked like something called diversion colitis. So there's something called diverticulitis, and then there's diversion colitis, which is something different. So what is diversion colitis? So that's a great question. I'm glad you asked. As the name suggests, it's where something in the body has been diverted. In my case, I've got my digestive system where the food goes in my mouth and waste comes out through my out my stoma, through my small intestine, and then my large intestine or colon is just chilling in there like it's been for 12 years, and that's the bit that's been diverted around. But because my colon doesn't have any waste or poo going through it, fibre, bacteria and all that shit, the cells lack nutrition. So they get nourishment from the blood supply, obviously, but the cells also get nutrition from stuff passing through it. So for all you guys with regular digestive systems, your shit, like, it nourishes your colon, the gut bacteria and all that stuff, and mine's just not been getting that. So you can get diversion colitis that's asymptomatic, so you've just got it and you don't know about it. But for whatever reason, and I do have some thoughts, I took some really strong antibiotics a little while back on why mine's happened now after all these years. I won't go into that, but yeah. But mine is, long story short, mine is symptomatic, pretty symptomatic. So I was given the info on the potential misdiagnosis, and I don't know, something just made sense to me, because way back, going back sort of 18 months and a bit further, this has never felt like the Crohn's flare-ups I had when I was younger. Back then, my eyes were puffy as well, my skin was terrible, my mouth had loads of ulcers, it felt like my whole body was kind of like shutting down at times, not just the symptoms I've got now, which is pain in the abdomen and the blood when I go to the toilet. So yeah, something about this new diagnosis felt right, and my intuition said what they'd found and were telling me was right, but equally I could be trying to mash two bits of information together to create my own conclusion, and that only time will tell, and we just need to see how things go over the next few weeks and months. So yeah, I had the flexi-sig, got the news about diversion colitis, and then was told after I'd been in hospital for the camera, that they'd follow up with me in outpatient. So I was like, okay, cool, I've got an appointment in a few weeks, great. But fast forward from the 18th of June to the 21st of June, and then shit got really bad, like pain, like a lot of pain, acute pain, lots of blood. I honestly felt like I'd been hit by a bus. I had a crazy headache and a fever, and I just couldn't get out of bed. So I called my IBD nurse, Emma, and she said, "Bro, I can't help you over the phone. It sounds like you need to go to hospital." She didn't say bro. So after a few hours of sitting in A&E with my mum, who's been fucking amazing throughout all of this, I was admitted into hospital for a 6-day stay. And again, this will hopefully make sense as I go into the psychedelic experience. I feel like I'm picking that up. And my reflections on the last few years. But going into hospital, it really was, looking back, it was the best thing that could have happened to me at that point in time. Because as soon as I got to the ward at 1 a.m. in the morning after getting to A&E at like 4 p.m, I had a little word with myself. And this resulted in a mindset shift. You see, for the last 2 years or so, 18 months, 2 years, since I've started having symptoms, I've thought that I've had some control over what's happening. So I've been saying to myself, I'll be better by X date. I'll be back in the gym by X date. Back in the pub with my mates by this date. And honestly, I've lost so much weight I've got I've got the body of like an 11-year-old boy right now. I don't feel myself, and I've been really resisting that and not accepting my current reality. So for so many months, I've not been accepting this current moment and everything that comes with it, including the body of an 11-year-old boy, me not wanting to be sick, me wanting to just be back normal, and I guess that resistance to my current reality. That's probably the best way I can describe it. So when I was in the hospital, got to the ward. It was 1 a.m. Everyone else was asleep. A few nurses milling around. I just had a word with myself, and I was like, "Bro, you need to let go. You need to just fully accept that this is the situation you're in right now. Just fully fucking surrender and stop trying to control everything, because you really fucking can't. This shit is not going to play out on your timetable. So, just relax, be ill, be depressed, do whatever you need to do to accept that, but accept that." And so I was like really fucking firm with myself, and then like listening to myself tell myself that, it's weird. I was like, man, fuck me, yes sir. I just really, listen to myself. Yeah, and that mindset shift really helped, just to completely submit and allow it to be, and just give up any illusion of control. Like I say, it was the best thing that could have happened, and it really set the scene for actually the next few weeks since the 21st of June until now, really. Just that feeling of absolutely surrendering to whatever's happening. So, but in the immediate short term, it made me just feel really super depressed, man. So on the ward, I was very quiet. I didn't really say anything or engage with the other patients or nurses. And they were all very lovely and friendly to me. Honestly, the nurses and doctors were so kind, and they couldn't do enough for me. I've also got lots of thoughts on the processes on the ward and in the NHS, and with my service design hat on. But yeah, maybe that's another video. So yeah, for 6 days in hospital, I pretty much just let myself sink. I binged on Netflix, just listened to audiobooks and Joe Rogan podcasts, and watched the most random shit on YouTube. I really just let myself go and be depressed and zoned out, and didn't try and control anything. And I just observed too. And being in hospital, it gave me an insight into the struggles others were having. Even in my condition, I was in by far like the best shape on the ward. So there was an older dude in the bed next to me, maybe 60 something. 2 weeks before, he'd been fine, living his life, and now he couldn't walk. And every time he needed a number 2, he had to call the nurse to get the commode, draw the curtains to shit, surrounded by 5 other dudes. And that was his life. And it had changed so quickly. And it turns out he had the early stages of cancer as well. So yeah. And then there was a dude opposite me, and he was 102, and he really wasn't with it. He couldn't move or eat for himself, and every now and then, when he'd been sat up in bed, he'd sort of stare at me across from the ward, and I couldn't tell if he was consciously staring at me or just staring off into space in my direction. But the look on his face was one of like just acceptance, like almost like I've had a good life, I'm ready to go now. And it was like really just beautiful in a way. And obviously, this is what I'm projecting onto him. He could barely talk either, but he just seemed so peaceful. And when his family visited him, they were so loving, and the nurses were so kind to him. And it's just, I don't know, the whole thing was just like lovely to watch with him. But there was another guy who was 30, and he was having end of life care. I'm not sure what was wrong with him, but the palliative nurses came, and visit him every day, and that was really pretty sobering to see that. And I'm 34, and so yeah, like I say, it's pretty sobering. On a different note, I need to share this and get out there. I had another realisation in hospital, and that was that I bloody love hospital food. It's so fucking good, man. I don't care what anyone says. It's like so basic, like the cheapest sausage or pie or something beige like mash or chips, gravy and some frozen peas. Just divine, man. Then to end, something wholesome as fuck like rice pudding or apple pie and custard. You know, for a kind of really depressive few days in hospital, it was the absolute highlight. It really was. It really was, and I've like polished off every single meal. And other people are like much iller than me, and left stuff, and I was like, man, that looks very very tasty. Like when they were taking the plates away. So yeah, that was a definitely highlight. So I was discharged after my information markers went from 107, which seems pretty high, but I don't know, down to 7. In the hospital, I was put on some intravenous steroids into my arm, and then moved on to the oral steroids that I'm on now, combined with meds specifically for diversion colitis. So sort of back to square one like I was back in March, with the steroids reducing and hoping the other meds will take over. So what are the new meds, I hear you asking? Well, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen. What we have here is an enema. And can you guess where this end goes? Yep. Twice a day, it goes up there, and 50 millilitres of a short chain fatty acid enema solution reaches my sigmoid colon. And how these wonderful things work is that they basically give my colon the additional nutrition I was talking about earlier. And honestly, so far so good. I've reduced down from 8 steroids or 40 milligrams down to 5 tablets or 25 milligrams, and so far things seem to be holding. But as we reduce the steroids further, we'll know more. I mean, that's like the crunch thing. So I just need to be patient and see how the next few weeks play out. And as I said, the crunch point will be once I've tapered off the steroids completely. We'll see if the enemas hold things at bay then. But I don't control this process. The only thing I can control is my attitude and my intention towards what's going on, like the process and what actually happens. It's just, no, I can't control that. So going back to my discharge from hospital, I got home and the depressive state continued. You know, I didn't get out of bed for about a week or 10 days. You know, mentally I felt, you know, all right, but I just, I don't know, just needed to sink there. So I ignored WhatsApp and messages from people being lovely and checking on me, you know, even though it felt rude, but I just had to focus on my own shit. And as I say, I just had to let myself and allow myself just to sink. And my mindset was kind of like, if I didn't want to do something, like, I'm not doing it. Like, if I don't want to text someone back, I'm not doing it. If I don't feel like showering, I'm not showering. If I don't want to change my boxes, I'm not. It got a bit like dark and disgusting. Like, it really did. Like I say, like I sank. I had bacon egg sandwiches for pretty much every meal because I didn't want anything else. Yeah, I just had sort of zero resistance, and I was just listening to myself and just giving myself exactly what I wanted or needed. And I was just like telling myself, anything you want, mate, you know, you've got it. Anything you don't want to do, don't do it. You're not being rude, you're not being ungrateful. It's just, this is the shit you've got to do right now, so just do it. Just, you know, be depressed, like, treat yourself, you know. And it was like I kind of had two voices in my head. You know, one was scared and one was supportive. And the scared one didn't know how to let go and just, like, you know, just follow what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. And it was like the reassuring one was just being supportive and reassuring, that, you know, the whole time. And And the experience is really interesting to look back on, because I was depressed. Like, don't get me wrong, I was down. Like, barely made any conversation with anyone, you know, even sort of with my mum who I live with. But it was almost like I was like watching myself be depressed, and I knew it was a phase because I knew that was what I needed and that I'd come out of it. So I rested, I slept loads, you know, my sleep schedule went out the window. I'd be up in the early hours. Steroids would make it difficult to sleep, so I'd wake up mid-morning and sleep again at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But generally, I rested and I gave my body what I needed. And I've heard, you know, the word depressed means what you need is depressed. So, you know, when you're depressed, you need depressed. And I've never really got that, because my attitude is generally like, you know, come on, let's go, what's next? You know, trying to like just never stop really and just keep going. So actually, to experience those few weeks of deep rest, you know, yeah, really helped me. Yes. So I'd had a period of deep rest, and while physically my body was and still is pretty weak, you know, I'm still not feeling 100% at all, my mind's feeling pretty strong. And I had psychedelics, you know, I'd got them, and I won't go into where I acquired them, but you know, I had them in my drawer. I knew I was going to take them, and I thought I wouldn't take them until like August or something. You know, I thought, yeah, let's get healthy and then take them. Then about sort of 10 days after I got out of hospital, something hit me, and I had this intuitive thought, and it's like, tonight's the night, you're going to do it. And I just followed that thought and went with it. Took them, and even if I say so myself, you know, again, no ego, I just had the most profound experience on them. So I went on one little trip on a very, you know, tiny dose, and then 2 bigger ones on much bigger doses over a period of a few weeks. And honestly, like what I experienced on them, even now, like, you know, a few weeks after taking them, it was like as meaningful and real to me as when I went traveling around South America for a few months. But like, instead of going like outside myself, I went inside. And that sounds hella hippie, but like it is what it is. But yeah, hopefully you'll see in the next video where I'll give some insight into what it was like. Thank you for watching. See you next time.